Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make a gorgeous 3D embossed roses card that's got so much texture to it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've got my roses image embossed in watercolor paper already. I'm cutting it down to 4.5 by 6.5 so it'll fit on a 5 by 7 card base. So I'm going to mist my background with water so that it's all completely wet, and then I'm using tumbled glass and broken china reinkers to color in the background. Once I've got most of the background done, I'm going to add a little bit of rusty hinge around some of the areas, just giving it a little bit more of a rusty vintagey vibe. Now I'm adding some bundled sage to the leaves and adding a little tiny bit of peeled paint where I want those leaves to be a little bit darker. For the roses, I'm going to use some spun sugar with a little bit of worn lipstick where I want the shadow or the darker part of the petals to be. Once it's done being painted, it needs to dry absolutely completely before we move on to the next step. So our image is completely dry. I'm using some mined Foundry Wax to highlight some of the surfaces. So first I'm going to go around the edges, and then I'm going to lightly go over different parts of the raised edges of the image for the card. Now, I wanted it to look a little bit grungy, a little bit weathered, so I'm just using my finger. If you wanted to be a little bit more precise with it, you could use a paintbrush and you could actually paint over the edges of the petals or whatever. Then you can be a little bit more precise as to where you want it. I added some isopropyl alcohol and I'm just flicking some dots over the whole card just to give it a little bit more texture. Now I'm going to hit it with the heat gun to let that leafing rise to the surface. So now I'm just going to glue all my layers together and assemble my card. Before adding the image piece, I'm just going to use some Walnut stain Distress ink, and I'm going to ink the edges just to give it a little bit more shadow. So at this point, I figured I was done my card, and then I decided to add a little bit more texture to the background with a script stamp. So I'm just using a Post-it note to protect my matte edges, and then I'm going to use that same walnut stain that I used to ink around the edges and just stamp in a few different places. Very loose. I'm not trying to get it pristine at all. I just want to add a little bit more texture to the background. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.